Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffery Mishlove.
From your background at the California Institute of Integral Studies,
Sure.
that's a school that was originally founded on principles of Sri Aurobindo, a spiritual teacher.
Very much so.
You're looking
Very
at
prolific.
You're looking at the nature of enlightenment, at least in that world. That's what they would call it, I think.
Absolutely. So after looking across all of these different populations, the one that really stood out to us were people who, and there's lots of different words for this, but people who basically purported to be enlightened or non-dual or persistently mystical in terms of their consciousness, or transcendental consciousness, God consciousness, unity consciousness. There's just so many different terms. We have over 200 terms at this point.
Well, it's interesting that you associate them with well-being, because there was a time, let's say back in the 1950s, when the orthodox thinking, the Freudian thinking about these people is that they are regressing back to an infantile state of oceanic oneness, and it was considered regression in a negative sense, not a positive sense.
Absolutely. There's been so much speculation from both sides of that coin for, you could say, 100 years or more, even going back to William James' time and some of the debates that occurred there, and then through our current time with Ken Wilber expressing a lot of different, perspectives and whatnot. From our perspective, I came into it really skeptical. I came into it not thinking that I was going to be researching people who claimed these types of things. I was trying to get the proper education that I needed to wrap my arms around well-being. So when these people started to kind of flow our way and make the kind of claims that they made about their internal state and the degree of well-being that they experienced, frankly, I didn't believe them. I'd never had a temporary experience of it. I never had a glimpse of it. People used to call me a spiritual turn-up.
But there's a deeper reason not to believe them. I think it goes back to the Tao Te Ching, the classic.
It's a whole other perspective on not believing them.
Work of Lao Tzu, who said, "Those who claim to know the Tao do not."
Right, exactly. So that's tricky because, of course, there is, to some degree, the ineffability of language, right? There's the despair of prose around all of this.
Which is why you use the term non-symbolic consciousness, I suppose.
It is. We had a hard time finding a word that didn't get the door slammed in our face by our early research subjects. And so, we would go to a potential research subject who at that time were basically like famous spiritual teachers and religious leaders and stuff like that, because we didn't have any other way of finding out whether what you were saying was true, right? So we looked for people that were essentially validated by a community, validated by a tradition, things like that, right? So we started on as safe a ground as we could find with this, because what good is research if nobody believes you at the end of it, right? So we had to make sure all the way through that we were really, really careful and really, really rigorous. But, the reality is, of course, that you have to talk about this in order to share it with other people, in order to help people get there.